This week we have a major central bank leveraging Hedera, doubling down on AI, support for one of my HBAR theories, and much more. Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, here once again to bring you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. But as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So the first thing that I want to dive into is that central bank that's looking at Hedera. This really is massive news. The DFCRC is running CBDC pilots called Project Acacia, and this is for the Reserve Bank of Australia, which of course is the central bank in the land down under. Hedera is one of the networks that's been shortlisted for their wholesale CBDC. To clarify, retail CBDCs could be used by the general public, whereas wholesale CBDCs are only used by banks for things like interbank settlement. The project named Ethereum, or an EVM-compatible private permission network. Second was Hedera, followed by Australian RWA-focused platform Redbelly, and finally the private network R3 Corda. Speaking of R3, I actually heard on Hedera Day last week that R3 is planning to move to a public version, kind of proving out that Hedera has the right strategy. But back to the point, now we have a major central bank piloting a CBDC on Hedera. Obviously, this is a huge development. Not only that, but in the deck outlining all of this, there was a slide discussing stablecoin and interbank interchange featuring our very own Rob Allen. So you know we're going to get the full scoop when he returns for Shark Bites just next week. So of course the RBA isn't launching a CBDC on Hedera tomorrow, but this is a great signal to other central banks out there, other banks out there, and enterprises in general that Hedera provides a viable solution even on this scale. The next thing I want to jump into is Mr. Wonderful himself, Kevin O'Leary, was at Consensus, and he was saying a few things that at least anecdotally prove out one of the theories that I had around HBAR. I have a couple clips that I want to show you. The first one comes from CoinDesk News there at Consensus.
And I believe, and I'm still an optimist, and I've said this multiple times, that crypto will be the 12th sector of the economy within 5 years, because it's so productive to the rest of the sectors, just in digital payments. Just think about what happened when Robinhood bought WonderFi. You can now transfer currency right across the border without using a bank. That's $1 trillion industry it's ancient, it's 60-year-old technology and really high fees. You now, if you have a wallet in Canada, you have a wallet in the US, you just do a transaction of a stablecoin. I mean, that's brilliant.
So obviously Kevin believes wholeheartedly in crypto, and I'm not surprised that the utility of crypto is the example he used, and that's what really resonates with him. The next clip that I have is even more pointed with Kevin discussing HBAR in particular, and it comes from Brandon D. He's at Consensus, posted it for hgraph.io, and it was really interesting, so let's check it out.
The majority of institutional capital waiting on the wings primarily is interested in Bitcoins. And if you ask the large institution after it's designated a commodity or a security, they're going to put on a 1.5% weighting, and they're going to start with Bitcoin. Now, what happens to the level 2s and everything else, and I'm a big shareholder in HBAR, I'm optimistic about the volatility is crazy at the price, but I own a bunch of positions, Avalanche, East, like everybody else, but that's just diversification. But really, I think what will happen when the regulatory environment is clear and we have designation to security over commodity, the volume of capital that will come into the top 5 tokens is going to be, it's going to be like a vortex sucking cash out of the crap at the bottom.
So these two clips, the first one where Kevin is discussing how the utility of crypto, payments specifically, really resonates with him. And of course, the second where he's talking about directly investing in HBAR kind of proves out one of the theories. And it was one of the things that I discussed a lot more when it became clear that the HBAR ETF might be one of the very first ones to come to market. And it's that a lot of the people, the entities that would get the ability to get exposure through these types of ETFs, they might not feel comfortable going out and buying spot crypto on a centralized exchange, and certainly not on a DEX. They might feel a lot more comfortable buying one of these ETFs through their brokerage firm. And I think a lot of the people that would get access, and they happen to be the people with the most money, would be older millennials, Generation X, boomers. And my theory was that Hedera would resonate more than some of the other tokens that would be getting these ETFs, like Solana, like Avalanche. You look at Hedera, it has this fantastic utility narrative around DePin and payments and supply chain. And then you look at the governing council, which of course is another really impressive selling point for Hedera, and that's just going to resonate with these older investors. And Kevin O'Leary is the perfect example of one of those people. Really thoughtful, he pays attention to the crypto space, but where Kevin was willing to go out and buy those assets at spot and buy them directly, a lot of other investors that might be like him, be that kind of persona, would not be willing to go out and buy them at spot, but they'll certainly be willing to go out and buy an ETF in their brokerage account. So I think this is a good indication that my theory is correct and that HBAR is really going to resonate with those investors. All right, so moving on, we're going to get into how Hedera is continuing to lean into the AI narrative. And they're doing that by launching the Hedera AI Studio to go along with their stablecoin and asset tokenization studios. The Hedera AI Studio is an open source modular toolkit that simplifies the creation and deployment of verifiable AI agents on the Hedera network. By offering a suite of intuitive tools, developers can build intelligent, transparent, and automated AI workflows with minimal effort. AI systems are often seen as black boxes, opaque, unverifiable, and difficult to govern, especially when integrated into real-world applications. AI Studio bridges this gap by enabling developers to build AI agents that operate transparently and verifiably on Hedera. Powered by the Hedera Consensus Service, the AI Studio enables users to submit data and transactions to the Hedera network where they're timestamped and logged, guaranteeing fairness and immutability. With additional components including the Hedera Agent Kit, Eliza OS plugin, Hedera MPC server, and OpenConvey, the entire AI workflow, messaging, decision-making, tokenization, and logging can be executed and recorded on-chain, making auditability and accountability a default. So, of course, I'm not the expert on this, so we're going to get Jay Cool on next week to do a deep dive into this and the entire AI ecosystem and give us a really good update. So we're going to stick with AI, but we are going to add a meme coin into it. You heard that right, a meme coin. One of Hedera's top meme coins, Gib, has launched a Hedera AI information assistant. You can go in and ask it anything you want about Hedera. Now, without thinking, like a tool, I asked it who the HBAR bull was. It responded the HBAR bull is a popular figure in the Hedera community, often recognized for promoting the Hedera network and its native cryptocurrency HBAR. This persona typically engages with the Hedera community through social media, sharing insights, news, and updates about Hedera's developments, projects, and ecosystem. The HBAR bull symbolizes enthusiasm and support for the Hedera platform, encouraging others to learn more about its features and potential. I also tried KiloScribe, to which it responded, KiloScribe is a tool designed for inscribing websites, games, and NFTs on the Hedera hash graph. It allows users to create and manage digital assets on the Hedera network, leveraging its fast and secure infrastructure. KiloScribe provides an inscription API which developers can use to integrate the functionality of inscribing content into their applications. So overall, I'd say Gib AI is pretty dialed in and ready to go. On a sour note, it might put me out of a job soon, but that's okay as long as HBAR hits a buck on this run. Now I have some thoughts on some key opinion leaders. The first one is Kamal Yousefi with the Hashgraph Association, who's discussing how he's trying to bring outside capital into the Hedera ecosystem. You mentioned Sovereign Wealth Fund,
Yes.
and you've had some success in bringing outside capital in.
Indeed.
Specifically from Saudi Arabia, there was
Yes.
a $200 million investment, total of 250, but
Yes.
actually coming from Saudi Arabia was 200, and I believe an additional 40 for a total of 50 coming
Indeed.
out of Qatar, right?
Yes,
Can you talk to us about how that process went,
absolutely.
what they're looking at investing in the Hedera
Yes.
space, and just give us a general
Absolutely,
overview.
absolutely. In our philosophy, to have a vibrant ecosystem, you need to address or focus on three key factors. Number one is the infrastructure. So basically, you need to operate out of a strategic region, out of a key jurisdiction that gives you that legal certainty around digital assets and crypto and Web3 in general. The second factor is the capital funding. It just required when you enter the digital transformation initiatives or digital solutions or Web3 era in general, you need some sort of funding to back up the innovators and entrepreneurs and pioneers like yourself to explore the future and build solutions that are suitable for the future. And the third factor, which is talent. So you need to really have talented people that you train, certify, and prepare them and equip them with the technical and the functional knowledge so that they can build robust and solid solutions in the Web3 era. So that's basically the philosophy that we had in mind. And then we realized within the HashGab Association, we have, as we speak today, 5 different programs. We started with the grants, but we realized that grants are like an interesting vehicle to attract talent to kind of bootstrap use cases and projects. But normally the grant size is not enough to build up a business. So you still need some sort of decent funding to move forward. In that context, we realized, okay, to start with and to bootstrap, the grant program is the right program to start with. But how about those who succeeded in completing the grant program successfully and they ended up with an MVP or a solution? You need some sort of scale-up funding, which cannot cover through a grant because a grant is purely technical enablement. Then we come up with the idea to establish the venture building program, basically a continuity of the innovation program, which gives you a higher ticket of cash, plus some sort of engineering, plus some sort of strategy consulting, basically positioning within the Hedera ecosystem, but also within our global network of businesses, so that we figure out what type of cross-pollination that we can support, what type of business opportunities that we can bring to our startups and investees. Later on, we realized, okay, we started now with the grant, with tickets ranging between $50,000 to $250,000. Then those who succeeded and showed some sort of traction and good momentum, they benefited from the venture building program, which gives you $500,000 cash equity investment plus $500,000 engineering plus $500,000 business development support. But then we realized, well, how are we going to address the high growth potential ones, like the top stars? So these ones, they need scale-up funding ranging between $2 million to $5 million. And then hence we ended up with the idea of setting up a venture capital fund out of Abu Dhabi, out of EDGM. And we all know that Abu Dhabi is pioneering when it comes to investments, and it's now called the capital of capital. With their sovereign wealth funds combined, I think they are managing $1.64 trillion. Exceeding the sovereign wealth fund of Norway. And we all know the appetite when it comes to Web3 investments in Emirates and Abu Dhabi. So we have set up a $100 million fund there dedicated for the best entrepreneurs that have showed great track record in terms of engagement within the ecosystem, that have built their MVPs, leveraging either the innovation program or the venture building program or both. And now they are looking for scale-up funding. Then we realized, well, with $100 million, you cannot serve everyone in the ecosystem, and it's going to be tough. And Hedera doesn't have an infinite treasury, so does the HashGab Association. We have our own treasury, but it's not infinite. So we started exploring how can we tap into regional partners, regional business partners, regional investors, and make them co-invest with us in Hedera-enabled projects. And then one of the strategic decisions we made, we said, well, now we have the grant program, we have the venture building program, and we have the venture capital fund in Abu Dhabi, which is the venture capital fund within Hedera ecosystem. But how can we tap into governmental entities that have also some sort of funding to be deployed in their ecosystems? And the idea we had was like, why don't we set up the venture studios? The venture studios are a very interesting mechanism for governments, because you think about a sovereign wealth fund in a government or in a country, they are tasked to support the development of local economies. So, and if you look at the mission of the sovereign wealth funds and the mission of the HashGab Association is quite similar. So the HashGab Association is performing or acting as a sovereign wealth fund, but within the Hedera ecosystem globally. And the sovereign wealth funds in these countries, they are specifically serving the members and the citizens in these countries. Then we said, well, why don't we combine our visions and missions, and we will help you with the technical expertise and functional expertise when it comes to Web3. You guys bring your investments, and we co-invest in investing in Hedera part projects in these countries. So the first deal we have signed was with the Ministry of Investment in Saudi Arabia in partnership with PIF, which is the Public Investment Authority. The total size was $250 million, from which the HashGab Association committed 20%. and the remaining 80% are coming from local investors. And the goal there is the HashGraph Association is supporting with cash, with engineering, and also with business support, while the local investors are deploying cash in companies and startups that are interested in expanding in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So basically, for your project, for example, since you are one of the top projects that we have invested in the early days, there is an opportunity for you to apply and benefit from follow-on investments through that venture studio in Saudi Arabia and expand your business there. Later on, we have set up the same structure in Qatar. It's also called the Venture Studio for Digital Assets, or Digital Assets Venture Studio, in partnership with Qatar Financial Center, backed by Qatar Central Bank and Qatar Investment Authority. And soon we are going to announce something even bigger. I think it's going to be announced during Qatar Economic Forum, which represents a continuity of our well-established relationship with these government entities. The similar setup we have also in Morocco. We have also similar setup here in Switzerland. Here in Switzerland, for example, we work directly with the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Education. At the same time, we do engage with different venture capital funds. I think you met Enacta earlier today. Ralph is one of our, he's heading Enacta Ventures, one of the leading investment arms here in Switzerland that are investing in crypto startups, or let's say in Web3 startups. So, and that's kind of a model that we keep replicating. We are finalizing our agreement with one of the sovereign wealth funds in Emirates that will be also announced. We do target to announce that in the Abu Dhabi Finance Week later at the end of the year. And that's kind of the strategy that we are building. Basically, we enable, empower, and then provide you some sort of follow-on investment so that you keep the business up and running. And then for scale-up funding, we hand you over either to the venture capital fund in Abu Dhabi, or we position you in one of our venture studios that we have established across the 4 or the 5 continents.
Okay, and I actually have gone through some of this process. Twigital, my company, along with Jesse Damrow, we went through the grant program. We successfully went through that, came out with our proof of concept, launched it on iOS, and then we went into the initial stage of the venture program, which has been great for us to enhance our product. We actually got some really important IP as well, so we're excited about that, and we're looking forward to the next step. Next week, we're going to be posting that interview with Kamal in full, so check that one out. I also did an interview that I posted this past week with Enacta. Enacta is a capital allocator that is looking to deploy in the Hedera space. There were some really good insights, and you can find that on my channel. Next, we're going to go to the key opinion leader in the Hedera space, and that's Lehman Baird. He did an interview with CoinDesk that's certainly worth the read. It's great to see these Hedera leaders getting out there and explaining their vision and what Hedera has to offer, and I'd actually like to see a lot more of it. Next, we're going to go back to Hedera Day, held by the HashGraph Association just last week. It's a discussion between Duncan Moyer, who is now president of 21 Shares, but he's still on the board of Hedera, and former governing council member representative for Aberdeen, and Kamal Yousefi, who of course you just saw, talking about the benefits of Hedera, and then Duncan gets into some of the use cases he thinks have the most potential to impact the network over the next few years.
There are 5 USP, so let's say key differentiators that we have at Hedera. So number 1 is the governance, as Duncan mentioned. So basically you have reputable organizations that are there hosting the node and managing the network and governing the software changes at the highest level. And with that, if you trust, for example, Deutsche Telekom or Google, and you trust, for example, Aberdeen with your assets and Standard Bank with your banking statement, then most likely you are going to trust these organizations to validate the transactions on your behalf. Number 2 is the performance aspect of it. Hedera HashGraph network is in a position now to process a minimum of 10,000 transactions a second, which is massive. And number 3 is the security level, and I believe we are the only public chain that has implemented ABFT as we speak today. Number 4 is, I would call it stability. Stability in 2 dimensions. Number 1, stability in terms of transaction fees. So it's denominated in dollar. So you don't have to worry that much about the Bitcoin price going up or down. So you know exactly as an enterprise or as an SME or as a startup, you predict your transactions a day or a month or a year, and you know exactly how much it's going to cost you. And the second dimension of it is the fact that there will be no fork, because you have a network which is managed and governed by these highly reputable organizations. They were there for the last 50 years and guaranteed they are going to be there for the next 100 years. And last but not least is the sustainability aspect. We are the greenest public ledger out there. I believe we consume roughly 0.00003 watt an hour. So just to give you a comparison, who does use Visa or a MasterCard here in payments? So the moment you use your Visa card, you consume 100 times more energy, actually 1,000 times more energy than a transaction that Hedera consumes. So with that said, Hedera has been from day one set up to be an enterprise grade. It doesn't exclude startups or SMEs. It is enterprise grade, but still suitable for startups and enterprises. But moving to the next item, which we just mentioned.
Do you mind if I just add one more thing on that?
Please.
Because you've covered all like the points we basically looked at.
Yeah.
You can find like DLTs that are secure. You can find DLTs that are fast and are cheap.
Yeah.
It is really hard to find ones that cover all of these aspects. I think that's one of the actual true unique factors of Hedera is that it does tick the box across the board.
Indeed.
And if you want to get like boring kind of financial services nerdy, there's things like it's probably the only public, maybe one of the only public chains that is also OFAC compliant.
Yes.
So if you want to worry about, you don't want to have to worry if you're growing a big business or working with banks that you're going to send, gas fees to someone in a sanctioned nation.
Yes.
It's just a no-brainer to avoid that landmine. We're not saying, I guess we're saying stablecoins are not, they are already mainstream, are they? Should I bet on digital identity? I don't know. I feel like that's been around for, people have been talking about it for so long. I hope it's the case. I'm going to say DePin. I mean, I really love it. I think the world needs it. I mean, we should really look at blockchain as being, having like supporting good causes. And there's lots of people that are cut off, let's say from a comms perspective, are cut off in this world. And DePin it can be a solution to that. So it's one of the ones that I really love.
Thank you, Duncan. Okay, any last question? Okay, I see some hesitations. Okay, Isadora.
I hope we get to a point where we don't need to talk about whether something's permissionless or permissioned or even private. The original thesis when I was at Aberdeen was that everything should all be public. Public permissioned is the right way to go now, and eventually everyone will become comfortable with permissionless. But permissionless is nowhere near, like the solutions are not there for, let's say, KYC. If we're talking about like people buying the tokenized assets which become securities, the solutions are not there yet today for, let's say, zero knowledge KYC that are good enough. And so if we want people don't want to give out their identities, they don't want them visible on public blockchains. We need to have solutions to that, and permission chains can provide some can solve for that a bit. But like I would say the whole thing on permissionless. Let's just wait. Once people get over this, past thinking about this, and they start to look at, when the regulators actually start to look at the companies that are using the different chains, I can't wait till they start following the money and like the threads of where trades have gone on fully permissionless chains. Just coming back to what I was saying around like the gas fees, they're not even looking at that yet, but they will at some point, and people should be worried.
Yeah, and maybe just to share with you some insights, since we were attending .0 forum. And it's a public information anyway. And I met the CEO of and the founder of Corda/R3. He made a statement today. Actually, yesterday he was in a panel, and then he confirmed that today they are transitioning from a private permissioned chain to a public permissioned chain, basically confirming the vision that we had when we established Hedera Governing Council back in 2017 and 18. So the answer is public, basically make it open, transparent, accessible to everyone, but at the same time you still address the needs of highly regulated organizations or enterprises, governmental entities, by setting up a governing body around it. So with that said, I think we're coming to an end with this exciting fireside chat. Thank you, Duncan, for making it happen. Please help me give him a big thank you for sharing his valuable insights with us.
Thanks, Kamal. Thank you.
So I love that Duncan, a financial guy, went with DePin, decentralized physical infrastructure. Now, of course, there's crossover between finance and DePin, but I thought he was going to say something like cross-border payments or something along those lines. And of course, Hedera shines when it comes to DePin. There are two projects that I always point to. One is CLSQ, and we had an interview or a presentation done by Jonathan, who is leading the Sealcoin project, and that one absolutely blows people's minds when they realize how big they want to go with it. And the other one is Neuron, and they've started out, of course, with aviation and drones, but they are expanding much further than that, and now they're looking at AI in new ways as well. And they were at Hedera Day in Abu Dhabi, and he gave a presentation. I grabbed a few highlights that I wanted to make sure you guys saw.
Ultimately, today, humans are the customers, and we believe within the next 5 years, machines and AI systems will be the customers. Our focus at the moment is on premium data services, so buying premium data services from machines, and we're backed by Outlier Ventures, Ecosonic, and the UK government in UK research and innovation. So at the moment, we're seeing a lot of supply side within DePin. We see millions of devices all around the world deployed, but we're not seeing the customers come in the quantities that we'd hope. We're seeing some projects doing fantastically well. Tom went and talked about one in GeoDNet earlier, who are making waves in the GNSS space, which I also have a bit of experience in. But what we're not seeing is widespread adoption. And why is that? Well, ultimately, access to DePin networks is very difficult. It's also very inefficient. What we have is a situation where you're having to quite often go to web forms and contact the founders to actually access the data, purchase API keys, use credit cards, sign contracts. These are things that robots and AI agents aren't able to do. A lot of these networks also pass data into centralized clouds. And centralized clouds are great for storing data, but for real-time data, they have a few drawbacks, one of which is around latency, another is availability of these systems, and also around cost. So what we've developed is an edge network that enables any machine to access any other machine's data. And what that enables is AI agents and applications to access data in a streamlined fashion and get high-performance data from those machines. So that enables rapid data transfer. So you're doing peer-to-peer, which is what blockchain is all about. High-integrity data coming from those. And also increased reliability from these systems. And so this access can be at the machine level or at the cloud level. Now, the rise of AI and robotics is really creating a demand at the moment for high-quality data and automation of access. Machines and AI systems need high-quality, high-performance, and trusted data. And they will seek that out. AI systems will always seek that out. Premium data services is about a $3.5 trillion market. So this isn't a small market we're talking about here. And then when you look at the global market for services, which is ultimately going to be replaced, if you believe Elon Musk, by machines and AI systems, we're talking about a huge market of online digital services. So our system is an infrastructure, and what it enables is machines to buy from machines. And that's secured by a validator network. And the validator network basically ensures trust between the two parties. You've got machines on one side as the suppliers, and you've got machines on the right-hand side, which are the customers. And they can be AI systems and applications, robotic applications in the future. So we've already tackled 3 industries here. Flight tracking within the transportation industry. We've now just adopted weather within the environmental sector, and we've also looked at mobile data within the communication sector. But this is broad. This is across services, whether that's smart homes to financial markets and even education. All of these markets rely on premium data. Now, to set up a node, it's fairly straightforward. What you've got is you need to define your service. So are you providing a weather service? Are you providing a GNSS service? You then need to install your environment variables, which are basically just your public address and your private key. There's a few others in there as well. But really, these systems are going to be reliant on an address to go and transact with each other. You install your machines, install this on your machines, and then run the executable. It's quite straightforward. It takes less than a day to do. It's easy to set up. And as a customer then, if I want to go and access this data, it literally a matter of milliseconds to access it. running executable, and now I've got data streaming straight into my computer in a peer-to-peer fashion. And this was, I think, in one of the machines was in London, the other was in New York. So you can see within literally 0.1 of a second, the data was now coming through to my computer. What the Neuron network does is it enables customers to discover, connect, pay, and have that payment protected. Each party has an EVM address, so they're able to discover and connect and pay one another. And no API key, credit card, or contract is needed within that process.
So we should all be really proud of what we're seeing coming out of our DePin space. I believe the Neuron token is supposed to be coming out towards the end of this year, maybe early next year. And then Sealcoin, I think, is coming out this summer. So I want to participate in that. Next, we're going to get into a team that we interviewed recently, Fraunhofer, and we talked to them about green hydrogen. But they're going to be talking about something completely different today because there's different divisions building things on top of Hedera. So let's check it out. Some people out there might be a little bit confused because we just had Fraunhofer on a few weeks ago, but they were talking about something completely different. We're going to be talking about a different track today. And to do that, we have Celine. Celine, thank you for coming on today and welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, it's certainly my pleasure. I'm going to jump right into these questions. You're using Hedera in a way that we haven't seen in a live environment to this point for resource and service management, as well as for incentive mechanisms in large organizations. Why are systems based on DLT and self-sovereign identity good infrastructure to leverage in these large orgs?
Well, we believe that distributed ledger technology and self-sovereign identity provide a solid foundation for managing people, resources, and services, especially in large decentralized organizations like Fraunhofer itself. And here, Fraunhofer is a great example because of its unique setup. So with over 70 semi-autonomous institutes, each managing its own people, projects, and resources, there's a lot of complexity in managing access to data, equipment, and also their own digital services. And here, traditional services or traditional systems which rely on centralized control and siloed data often don't scale well in environments like this. And DLT and SSI in that regard offer a more flexible, trust-based alternative that works across organizational boundaries. And here, this technology allows us to streamline onboarding and offboarding, enable role and skill-based access control, and support secure collaboration across units. And at the same time, it helps align people and projects strategically by introducing incentive models that reward things like personal development, knowledge sharing, and impact. And once done right, these mechanisms foster motivation and a lot stronger sense of institutional purpose. So by using decentralized identity, verifiable credentials, data authorization, tokenization, we can automate key processes while improving security, reducing overhead, and supporting strategic goals like IP protection, data integrity, and innovation alignment. And here, Fraunhofer is a natural fit, but the same architecture could basically support any large organization that are looking to improve transparency, workflow automation, and trust, both internally and also with external partners.
This makes perfect sense to me. Now, can you tell us a little bit about the specific suite of tools that you're working on and how they're going to be used in practice?
Sure. We are currently focused on two core areas. So at the one hand, we have onboarding and offboarding processes. On the other hand, what we call the researcher's journey. So basically focusing on the operational journey of the researcher in our organization. So to support these use cases, we have built a comprehensive Web3 ecosystem, actually, that is built on Hedera, that is made of various decentralized apps and services tailored to organizational workflows. So instead of focusing these individual apps or services, I would like to rather go use case basis, if that's okay.
Sure, that's fine.
So the onboarding use case basically replaces the typical paper-based manual process where new employees chase after signatures and access rights, which is pretty much the manual way it's happening at the moment with us. And we have digitized this and secured the entire process. So using decentralized identity and verifiable credentials, each of these steps like registration, ID issuance, equipment assignment, training confirmations, These are all automated, logged, and verifiable. And meanwhile, HR, IT, and admin teams stay updated in real time, making the experience more efficient and transparent for everyone that is involved. When we look at the researcher's journey, so the other use case, we are aiming to support the staff throughout their time in the organization. So this includes, for example, data notarization through smart contracts. Intellectual property rights are quite important in our work. So authorship and integrity are basically time-stamped and tamper-proof. We also enable skills-based access tools and services. So, for example, after completing a training, a researcher receives a credential automatically that grants access to relevant lab equipment or systems that they were not able to access because of lack of skills or so. We have also linked lab assets to digital tokens, allowing transparent tracking of access and usage. And also to encourage engagement, we have introduced a strategic incentive system where researchers basically can earn credentials for contributions like mentoring or knowledge sharing among colleagues or new project acquisition or funding acquisition. And these can later be exchanged for programmable credits, so usable for things like internal training or lab services, or even sometimes small perks like coffee at the snack bar. So overall, we are basically created a Web3 based environment that reduces manual effort, builds trust, and also supports a more accountable and also rewarding research culture.
Selin, I had flashbacks to my last career. I worked offshore as an officer, a large organization. I had dozens of credentials, binders filled with stuff. And then we had on-job training. And I remember going through and getting those sign-offs that you were mentioning. So I can certainly see the value of what you're working on. Now, you also mentioned that Fraunhofer is a fairly large organization yourselves. Are you planning on using this internally, or are you going to get with other large organizations to pilot this program?
So right now we are focusing on piloting the system internally at our institute, which is actually Fraunhofer FIT, so one of these 70 institutes that I just mentioned. And our goal is to support here the key internal processes where it can really make a difference. So like the onboarding, offboarding example with the process automations, data integrity, secure access, and maybe strategic incentive alignment as well. At the same time, the system is designed to be scalable and adaptable. So these challenges, as you also just mentioned, that we are addressing are not really unique to us. They are quite common across many large organizations. So while we continue to build internal alignment, we are also sharing our work externally, just like right now. We are actively engaging with partners and also other institutions to exchange ideas and explore also broader applications. So in fact, at the beginning of June, we are hosting a community event with industry participants where we will present our system, show how it works in practice, and also discuss how organizations can benefit from this kind of innovation. And I think at its core, we can say that it's part of a broader effort to show what's possible with decentralized infrastructure and also to help others modernize how they manage people, processes, or services using emerging technologies.
I think this is a great opportunity. Of course, all the HBAR out there, many of them work for large organizations like this. So if anybody has a large organization that can use this kind of tools, I'm sure we could probably get them in touch. So Celine, what is some of the next steps for what you're building? I'm just curious, you've built it to this point. I'm just curious what the next steps are.
We are in the final implementation phase, so it's actually still ongoing with just a few technical and integration steps remaining. And once complete, the next major step will be to pilot the system within our institute and evaluate it with the relevant stakeholders. So assessing real-world performance and also identifying opportunities to improve usability, functionality, and alignment with institutional needs. It's always easy to just assume certain requirements, but when it comes to reality, it doesn't always come up like that. So it will be a good chance for us to observe that. At the same time, equally important is engaging in targeted discussions with decision makers inside the Fraunhofer Institute, such as the Director of Digital Transformation and ICT Infrastructure at Fraunhofer Gesellschaft, to spark interest, clearly also communicate the benefits, and highlight the urgent need for such a solution in next generation enterprise resource and service management.
Selin, well, it certainly makes sense to me. Is there anything else you'd like to pass on before we let you go?
I think we've covered pretty much everything. And if anyone has any further questions, they can feel free to contact us, and we would be happy to help out with the different use cases and so on.
Well, I'll get your contact information, so if anybody is interested, they can get in touch. I appreciate you coming on here today and telling us all about it. And as you move down your roadmap, I'd love to have you back.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
So nothing perks up the ears of somebody that's following the crypto space quite as much as when Swift is brought into the conversation. And there was a post made by the DeRec Alliance that caught my attention. It told followers to watch a video from Swift on ISO 20022. It was interesting to see the Hedera-led DeFi Alliance pointing us towards a Swift announcement, and it begs the question, why? After seeing Alyssa DiCaprio from Swift speak at HederaCon, any connections like this with Swift are absolutely welcome. So this post by the DeRec Alliance and even Swift's attendance at HederaCon are just smoke, but I'm hoping to see some flames before too long. I think there's tremendous potential for Hedera to work with Swift and enhance their operations. I'm going to be keeping a really close eye on this space. Next up, I want to give a hat tip again to Genfinity for some of the digging they're doing. Ryan put out a video on a paper he found entitled Telco Stablecoin Development by a trade association called GSMA, who represents the interests of the telco industry. They represent over 750 mobile operators and 400 companies in the broader mobile space. The focus of the paper was something that Hedera has had its sights on for a while: roaming settlement between providers. It caught Ryan's eye because Hashgraph was mentioned as one of the preferred solutions. They lay out the proposed structure with an EVM-compatible DLT like Hedera at its core. Also of note, there are two mediums of exchange they want to leverage. Unsurprisingly, they mentioned a digital dollar, but they also mentioned SDRs, or special drawing rights. Now, I always thought of SDRs as a supranational currency for central banks, but apparently mobile networks have been using them for a while, so it makes perfect sense that they would create an SDR stablecoin for this use case. Vodafone, an entity with 93,000 employees and over 300 million customers, was the primary author, but other contributors included Monique Morrow, Hedera board member, Richard McNamara of Hedera Governing Council member Zane, and Greg Scullard from Hashgraph and Swirlds. I've heard over and over about this use case, so it's good to see that it's moving forward with these major players. So I am curious about something. I come on here week in and week out, and I cover what's going on in the Hedera ecosystem. And it doesn't leave me a lot of time to pay attention to what's happening on other networks or what's going on with other crypto YouTubers. I certainly watch some, but I don't see a lot that are focused on one network like we are here and the utility that's being built. You know, we see things around market dynamics, around the tokens, and of course there are some that talk about fundamentals as well, but I wasn't sure if there was anybody that was kind of designed like we are here, where we're focused on the utility of a single network. Of course, we talk about tokens and things like that as well, but I just want to get some feedback. If there are other channels out there that are talking about similar things that we do, but on a different network, I wanted to check them out to see if there's anything that I could possibly improve. We do have a few more pieces of news that I wanted to discuss. The next one comes from Kabila, who created something for Hashgraph. It's called the Hedera Contract Builder, and it brings smart contract exploration and development straight to your browser. Whether you're new to Web3 or an experienced developer looking to increase your productivity, you can go from idea to the deployment of a Hedera smart contract in just a few minutes. We also have a new initiative called May Madness going on, pitting our NFT projects against each other in a friendly competition. Now, competition is going to be stiff, but Bulbarians are in there, so if you want to try to push a Cinderella story, all you have to do is send a half an HBAR to 0.0.9172393 with the memo saying Bull won. When all is said and done, first place is going to get 50% of that pool, second place is going to get 25%, third place 10%, and fourth place 5%. So these rounds last for 48 hours. It's not completely open-ended. Of course, you can vote for any NFT in the bracket as long as you include the correct memo that's associated with that NFT and the NFT is in a live round. So sticking with some of the fun Hedera social media stuff, we're going to go to the Barking Game. The Barking Game Season 4 has just concluded, or it's concluding today, which means any of the HBAR tokens that you have been allocated throughout that season, you're going to be able to claim them this weekend. I love the Barking Game because of its simplicity. I also like that when you're barking to people that might not be engaged, maybe influencers or people that don't know what Hedera is, it sparks that question in their mind, like, what is HBAR? And they might go out and get a Hedera wallet and participate in the game and then get involved with everything else we have going on in the Hedera space. So with all of that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and jump into some Hedera network analysis. Hedera has been averaging about 10 TPS over the past 24 hours. Time to consensus finality is just 2.85 seconds. Hedera has also generated about $1,200 in revenue over the past 24 hours, and there's been between 300 and 500 hourly active users. Now let's move into the crypto and HBAR markets. Risk assets in general moved up, but crypto enjoyed most of its move in prior weeks. Still, things are shaping up really nicely. Bitcoin is flat on the week and it currently sits between $103,000 and $104,000. HBAR is the same and is flat on the week and day, sitting just under 20 cents. But HBAR did see a high just under 23 cents this week. I think we might be sitting on an area of support where we are, and though there might be some resistance around 23 cents, 28 cents is going to be the real test if we head north. Looking forward to next week. I'm going to post that interview that I had with Kamal, also the discussion that Kamal and Duncan had at Hedera Day. We're going to get that out in full as well. I have an interview with Jay Cool. We're going to talk about Hedera and AI again. I'm also going to be getting Smackem on, and I'm working on a couple other interviews. Hopefully we'll get them on. And of course, we're going to get Rob back for another Shark Bite. So if you have any questions for him around the HBAR economy or Hedera ecosystem, go ahead and drop those down in the comments. And I'm going to be looking into, or we are launching a wine for Hedera, both a white and a red. We're taste testing those right now. It's going to launch on Cask Capital, which of course makes sense. They're starting off with whiskey. We're going to move them into wine as well. So I'm looking forward to the label we come up with for that new HBAR wine. That's pretty much all we have. We'll see you next week.